Good morning. Welcome to another broadcast day on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, a private not-for-profit organization. As always, please feel free to contact us with your comments, suggestions, or any questions you may have. And please stay with us. Our Rainbow Phone News is coming up next.
The following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or another print disability that makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org. Your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service now presents a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo News for Sunday, August 2nd. Your reader for the first hour will be Edwin Vieira, and for the second hour, your reader will be Ron Bickelman. First, a look at the weekly forecast. Not as warm today with rain and thunderstorms. There can be ponding on streets and highways. Watch out for flooding, and there will be a high of 76. A couple of thunderstorms this evening and a low of 65. A couple of showers to start off the work week tomorrow with a high of 78 and a low of 63. There'll be times of clouds and sun on Tuesday with a high of 82 and a low of 66. More thunderstorms on the way for Wednesday with a high of 81 and a low of 68. Humid and a few showers on Thursday with a high of 81 and a low of 67. Thunderstorms continue on Friday with a high of 82 and a low of 67, but it'll be partly sunny and a bit humid on Saturday with a high of 81. And now, here's our first story. Hochul and Blakeman spare few expenses in race for governor, both candidates whining and dining the wealthiest donors. The campaign trail in New York's race for governor is paved with luxury. Committees for Governor Kathy Hochul and Nassau County Executive Bruce Blakeman have billed their campaigns for stays in upscale hotels, swanky fundraising venues, and expensive airfare and meals at exclusive restaurants, as both candidates preach to voters about the state's affordability crisis. Hochul's campaign committee, Friends of Kathy Hochul, expensed thousands of dollars in stays over the last year in Beverly Hills, Florida's Palm Beach, Martha's Vineyard, the Hamptons, Mackinac Island, and the Waldorf Astoria in Manhattan, among other locations. And Blakeman's campaign committee, Blakeman for New York, spent thousands of dollars on boutique hotels outside Buffalo and Greene County, a Victorian hotel in Saratoga Springs, the upscale Otsego Hotel in Cooperstown, as well as chartered jets, according to State Board of Election disclosures. These expenditures suggest both candidates are whining and dining the wealthy donors at fancy establishments at a time when affordability is a major issue, said Alex Camerda, Senior Policy Advisor at Reinvent Albany, a nonprofit state government watchdog organization. Camarda said the number of people that traveled, dined, and lodged at campaign expense could make what looks like a ritzy outing more ordinary. Overall, Hochul, a Buffalo-born Democrat, has in the last year spent close to $7.8 million, but Blakeman, a Republican who launched his campaign in December, has spent $4.8 million, records show. Blakeman's spending includes $4.5 million in, quote, qualified expenditures eligible to be funded by taxpayer-funded matching funds. This appears to show that Blakeman reported certain transactions as qualified expenditures, so he intends for the public funds to cover these expenses, Camarda said. Such spending would face an audit. Any expenditure exceeding fair market value of services, materials, facilities, or other things of value is considered a non-permissible use of public dollars under the rules of the state's Public Finance Campaign Board, Camarda noted. Since July 15, 2025, Hochul's campaign spent $32,517 on lodging. It included stays at both the Beverly Hilton and the Mosaic Hotel in Beverly Hills, California, the Tideline Palm Beach Ocean Resort and Spa in Palm Beach, the Edgartown Inn on Martha's Vineyard, Massachusetts, Grand Hotel 286 on Mackinac Island, Arizona Biltmore in Phoenix, the Guest House at the Norwalk Inn in Connecticut, the Canoe Place Inn in Southampton, and EHP Resort and Marina, which notes on its website that Vogue magazine dubbed it one of the top hotels in the Hamptons, filing show. Hochul's campaign in the same time period allocated $15,860 for a fundraising event at the Harvard Club of New York City and $9,386 at Club 101 in Manhattan, which offers members an exclusive luncheon dining experience and meeting facilities in a Park Avenue tower. Friends of Kathy Hochul spent $44,795 on meals, including dining at La Bernardine, a French restaurant in Manhattan, consistently listed as one of the top restaurants in the world. Jean Georges and 425, two fine dining restaurants in Manhattan, Osteria La Baia, an upscale restaurant in Manhattan as well, the Stag's Head and Arteschi's Patroon in Manhattan again, Rosanna's in Albany, and Dinosaur Barbecue in Syracuse. In Western New York, the Buffalo-born Democrat expensed meals at the Buffalo Irish Center and Daniela 387 in Buffalo. Her campaign expensed $47,700 on transportation costs, most of it on airfare, as well as Amtrak train service, car rentals, and ferry service. Governor Hochul is building the campaign infrastructure to reach voters across the state about her work to bring down costs, invest in public safety, and protect New York families, and about Blakeman's MAGA loyalty tour that's making life more expensive, taking deep healthcare cuts even further, and sending an unaccountable ICE into our streets while Trump attacks New York, said Hochul campaign spokesperson Ryan Radluvacki. Madison Spanidermos, a spokesperson for Blakeman's campaign, defended his expenditures. She said they represented 2% of his matching funds. Bruce Blakeman is proud to treat his volunteers with gratitude and appreciation while patronizing local businesses to help them survive under the oppressive economic environment created by Hochul. Blakeman's spending covered a $3,000 stay at the Reichart House, a boutique hotel in Amherst, 2 stays at the Buffalo Marriott Niagara Hotel, also in Amherst, and a stay at the Chautauqua Suites Hotel and Expo Center. Outside the region, Blakeman's campaign funded stays at the Garden City Hotel in Nassau County, the Hilton Garden Inn in Times Square, Camptown Hotel in Leeds, and Adelphi Hotel in Saratoga Springs. Blakeman's fundraising included events at Rothman Steakhouse in Nassau County, the Fort Orange Club in Albany, Heritage Club in Bethpage, and Lessings in Farmingdale, both on Long Island. The campaign expensed $6,555 in meals, including visits to Amalfi Coastal Kitchen and Cocktails, a waterfront eatery in Hampton Bays, Casa Stellina, an Italian eatery in Farmingdale, La Brochette Steakhouse in Manhattan, Premola Italian Restaurant, Noah's Italian Restaurant in Saratoga Springs, and Attilo's Italian Restaurant in Syracuse. Blakeman expensed $29,764 on transportation, including $24,214 on Justice Air, a charter jet company, in addition to costs for other airlines, Amtrak, and Metropolitan Transportation Authority costs. Cop ticketed after stopping girlfriend of a fellow officer. When Buffalo police officer Joshua Patchett's girlfriend got pulled over in March for speeding and erratic driving on the Kensington Expressway, he did more than just offer sympathy. According to city records, he gave a ticket to the officer who pulled her over. The matter's under investigation by the Buffalo Police Department's Internal Affairs Division. The department denied requests by the Buffalo News under the state's Freedom of Information law for documents and records related to the incidents, citing the active Internal Affairs investigation. Other city records, however, confirmed the 2 traffic stops. Kaylee Swain was nabbed on radar driving 100 miles an hour in a 55-mile-an-hour zone and cutting off other vehicles, according to the tickets issued by Buffalo police officer Mark Slowick. The stop came during a heightened law enforcement presence on the expressway, which has become notorious for its instances of motorists exceeding, and in some cases nearly doubling, the posted speed limits. A week after Swain was ticketed, Patchett pulled it over an off-duty Slowick and gave him a ticket. Patchett, age 25, who was hired by the department in January 2024, has continued working as the internal affairs case proceeds, according to the department. Patchett declined to comment for this story. A police department spokesperson also declined to comment, citing the department's policy not to comment on open internal affairs cases. John Davidson, president of the Buffalo Police Benevolent Association, the union representing both Patchett and Slowick, also did not respond to a request for comment. Swain, age 24, was pulled over during a speeding enforcement blitz on the Kensington Expressway that followed the March 19th 4-vehicle crash that killed a 30-year-old Buffalo man. Police suspect the cause of the fatal wreck was connected to speeding or drag racing. Swain got stopped at 3:13 p.m. on March 28th on the expressway near Best Street, according to documents the News obtained from the Buffalo Traffic Violations Agency. According to the documents, Swain drove past Slowick doing 95 miles per hour. Slowick's radar then clocked the speed of her 2018 Jeep at 100 miles per hour. The above driver continued to make unsafe lane changes for all 3 lanes, cutting off numerous cars, almost causing several accidents by changing lanes in a very unsafe manner, Slowick wrote in traffic court documents. Slowick gave Swain 2 tickets for speeding and making an unsafe lane change. On April 4th, a week after Slowick issued the tickets to Swain, Patchett pulled Slowick over on Seneca Street. The traffic stop happened at 7:01 p.m. on Seneca, just east of Michigan Avenue. Slawik was working that day, according to police records, having issued his final traffic tickets of the day at 5:57 p.m. on the Kensington near Jefferson Avenue. Patchett's stop of Slawik happened about a block away from the police department's Seneca Street garage, which is where Slawik parks his patrol vehicle when he's not working. Patchett pulled over Slawik's vehicle because of the tint on the front windows, according to the documents obtained by the Traffic Violations Agency. During the stop, Patchett asked Slawik for his license, but Slawik told him he didn't have it on him and had left it home. Patchett issued Slawik a ticket for driving without a license. Due to officer discretion, the motorist is only getting a ticket for not operating with a physical copy of his license on him, Patchett wrote in traffic court documents. Patchett was working in Central District, also known as B District, at the time he pulled Slawik over. He transferred to South District or A District on May 11th, according to department records. Patchett transferred back to B District on July 6th, according to other records. Swain completed a driver safety course, which is a prerequisite for her to get a plea offer to a lesser violation. But because Slawik has a driver's license as verified through State Department of Motor Vehicles records by the Buffalo Traffic Violations Agency, the charge against him was withdrawn. Slawik, who has been a Buffalo police officer since 1991, did not respond to requests for comment. You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier radio reading service. The time for our morning listeners is 9:11 a.m. For our afternoon listeners, the time is 4:11 p.m. And now on to a front page feature. FaceTime. Feds break norms with images of Trump. Donald Trump's name and face have been stamped on everything, from buildings to books, casinos to steaks. But while America celebrates its 250th birthday, Trump, the developer-turned-reality TV star-turned-president, is putting his name on currency and cultural institutions, park passes and passports, breaking long-held norms along the way. In mid-July, the U.S. Mint began pressing $1 gold coins with Trump's face, even as questions swirled over whether or not it was legal for a living president's likeness to appear on U.S. currency. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said in a social media post unveiling the new coins that it, quote, celebrates the strength of American values and the promise of a nation dedicated to preserving freedom for all. The coins, which have a gold-like finish, are slated to be released into circulation in the fall, the Treasury said. Critics, including ethics groups, historians, and government watchdogs, say Trump is using the national milestone, meant to be a bipartisan celebration of our shared history, to benefit his personal and financial interests in a way that's both unprecedented and unpresidential. The White House doesn't see it that way. President Trump is focused on saving our country, not garnering recognition, said White House spokesman Davis Ingle in an emailed response to USA Today. The president is ensuring that America gets the spectacular 250th birthday it deserves, Ingle added, citing events including the Great American State Fair, Patriot Games, and Salute to America, among others. This year, he said, is sparking a renewal of patriotism and national pride under this president's leadership. Anyone who finds a problem with that clearly suffers from a severe case of Trump derangement syndrome. But the past decade has not been normal. David Barrett is a political science professor at Villanova University and has taught courses on the presidency, from George Washington to today, for more than 30 years. He said he had to emphasize to his students that the political era in which they're coming of age, quote, isn't normal in the long sweep of history. Trump's impulse to attach his name, his preferred aesthetic, and his imprint on institutions, currency, and even the architecture of the nation's capital are far outside the norm. In the first century of our history, it was really considered unseemly and even kind of unconstitutional, said Barrett. Even into the modern era, it was considered not illegal, but certainly unseemly and really unpresidential. Americans are, he said, for better or worse, in a unique era, where the president has his image all over the place. Barrett said he'd reread the speech then-President Gerald Ford gave at Independence Hall in Philadelphia on July 4, 1976, in which Ford talked about the nation's founding documents and principles and its continued evolution. What he did not do at all, Barrett noted, was talk about Gerald Ford. However, egotism is not uncommon among presidents, he was quick to note. Anyone who holds the office wants to be well regarded by their contemporaries and by history. In addition to the $1 coins, here are some other items tied to America's semi-quincentennial that have or will include Trump's imprint. A $250 bill. Mock-ups have been created for a new $250 bill that would include Trump's portrait, which would mark the first time in 150 years a living person has been featured on American currency. However, it's still an open question whether the bill would ever be produced, become official currency, and be released into circulation. Republican-backed legislation directing the Treasury Department to produce the bill meant to commemorate the nation's 250th anniversary remains mired in the House. Then there's the different signature. The Treasury Department announced in March Trump's signature would appear on all paper currency, a departure from the traditional signatures of the U.S. Treasurer and the Secretary of the Treasury that usually appears on monetary bills. It would be the first time in U.S. history a sitting president's signature appeared on banknotes. According to Fortune magazine, $100 bills with Trump's signature began rolling out on July 4th. Besson wrote in a post on X that, quote, "There's no more powerful way to recognize the historic achievements of our great country and President Donald J. Trump than U.S. dollar bills bearing his signature. It's only appropriate that this historic currency be issued at the semi-quincentennial," the Post added. Other bills with Trump's signature are slated to appear later this year, though it will take several weeks for them to go through banks and enter general circulation. But what about a favored color? A commission handpicked by Trump in March approved a 24-karat gold commemorative coin with Trump's likeness in addition to the $1 coin. The Commission of Fine Arts approved the design with Trump leaning over the Resolute desk, modeled on a photo on display in the Smithsonian's National Portrait Gallery. The coin would have been about 3 inches in diameter. It was to be part of a series of special edition currencies released over the course of 2026, though it does not currently appear on the U.S. Mint's website. It had not received approval from the Citizens Coinage Advisory Council, a nonpartisan congressionally created group that advises the Treasury on coin designs. The committee declined to review the coin, saying a sitting president on currency goes against the country's founding principles and that federal law prohibits depicting a living person on U.S. currency. Then there's the merchandise. A website run by the Trump Organization, which is led by his 2 oldest sons, Donald Jr. and Eric Trump, features a variety of Trump 250 merchandise, including blankets, glasses, tote bags, and t-shirts. A Trump 250 polo shirt costs $105. A blanket with the logo is listed at $200. There's also a $65 cigar holder flask set, a $265 jacket, and a, quote, President Donald J. Trump gold medallion for $1,060. A similar silver medallion will set buyers back $180. The items, part of the Trump store, were listed a month after the organization filed a slew of trademark applications relating to the nation's 250th birthday. The Trump administration backed Freedom 250 events on the National Mall, which were separate from the bipartisan congressionally created America 250 events, including Trump merchandise as well. At the June 24th opening rally of the event, from which several performers backed out, citing the partisan nature of Freedom 250, T-shirts with the phrase "America is back" with a collage image of Trump retailed for $35. Red hats in Trump's "Make America Great Again" style, but bearing the "America is back" tagline, were also for sale at the opening rally for $40. They were gone by the following day, USA Today reported at the time. Now there's passports too. In June, Trump unveiled renderings of a commemorative U.S. passport with his image on it, marking the semi-quincentennial. The new passports, Trump said in a June 26th social media post, reflected the message, "Welcome, but be good," on what the White House called a Patriot passport. The images of Trump leaning on the Resolute desk, the text of the Declaration of Independence in the background. On the opposite page is an image of John Trumbull's iconic painting of the signing of the Declaration. The State Department, which issues passports, called the limited edition passports, quote, "a piece of history Americans can carry with pride as they travel the world, showing what American leadership looks like." About 40,000 of the passports were released and available for no additional charge at the Washington, D.C. Passport Agency. Then there's the park passes, last but not least. Trump's face, along with George Washington's, are on annual park passes for U.S. residents. The America the Beautiful National Park Pass marks the first time a sitting president's image has been on national park passes, and environmentalists and others challenged the move in court. National park passes typically depict landscapes, wildlife from across the nation's flagship parks, and some park visitors bought stickers to cover Trump's image, a move that could invalidate the pass entirely. The move was part of an America First revamp that also raised annual park pass fees for international tourists, $250 versus $80 for U.S. citizens. The National Park Service added a new day on which American citizens and legal residents can visit for free, June 14th, Flag Day, which is also Trump's birthday, Juneteenth, and Martin Luther King Jr. Day, which had previously had entry fees waived, were taken off the list of free days. And now on to world news. Le Camping is at a crossroads due to climate change. From Reuters. The order to evacuate came around 8:30 p.m., just as families were sitting down to dinner. Wildfire flames were bearing down on a campsite in southwest France, and police told manager Hadrien Folliot he had little time to remove roughly 1,200 holidaymakers. Less than half an hour later, the site was empty. They had to leave very, very quickly, Folliot said, recalling the evacuation of the Domaine de la Rive campsite near the town of Biscarrosse, one of 20 he manages in a region of pine forests and long, sandy Atlantic beaches. Many customers left their meals on the tables. They were right in the middle of eating. The scene was a stark illustration of a growing threat facing one of France's most cherished holiday traditions. Born out of a wave of social reforms 90 years ago that introduced paid holidays and democratized leisure time, Le Camping has come to embody an egalitarian ideal of summer, travel, and freedom. France's 7,400 campsites are cherished places where children play late into the night, teens sneak their first kiss, and adults clink milky glasses of pastis along with neighbors from across France whom they meet year after year. But as French camping approaches its centenary, an industry that has shaped generations for family holidays finds itself increasingly exposed to the realities of warming climates. Campings are located in forests, by the sea, and along rivers, which is why we are directly affected by the wildfires, says Nicolas Daillot, president of France's National Federation of Outdoor Lodging. We need to find solutions. We're now in the 21st century, not the 20th. It's been a wake-up call. Folliot and his team returned to the campsite this week to find it untouched by the fire, yet traces of the abrupt exodus were everywhere. An abandoned blow-up flamingo slowly deflating, an open bottle of wine waiting to be drunk. Guests are due to return this weekend, but Folliot estimates losses of around 2 million euros or 2.30 million American dollars, equivalent to 15% of annual turnover. He said insurance was unlikely to cover the costs of refunds or lost business from the ban on hosting holidaymakers. The Nouvelle Aquitaine region, where the Gironde and Landes fires broke out, is France's camping epicenter. Daillot said 62 campsites had been evacuated in the wildfire-affected area, with one completely destroyed and 3 suffering minor damage. At a campsite near Lège Cap Ferret, which Reuters visited with firefighters, the flames had been extinguished just 2 meters away from hastily abandoned tents. Daillot said the fires had prompted many cancellations for late July and August, a month which typically represents 40% of campsites' annual business. While the sector as a whole could absorb the blow, he said, smaller family-run businesses were particularly vulnerable. The industry must now consider everything, from replanting vegetation and redesigning campsite layouts to relocating some sites altogether and improving access to water for firefighting. Folliot said this year's fires were a wake-up call. We have to relearn how to live with the forest, with the climate conditions we're facing now. But there's uncertainty about that. Olivier Serost, a sociologist who has studied Le Camping, said the idea of vacationing in nature was born in Britain in the late 19th century but migrated to France, where it became closely associated with the paid holidays introduced by Leon Blum's Popular Front government in 1936. Campsites took off in the 60s and 70s as cars and caravans became more common, allowing working families an affordable way to explore the country. The industry began to professionalize in the 1980s, when around half of campsites were still municipally owned. These days, over 80% are privately run, with investment funds backing some firms that own up to 250 sites. The cost of an average night at a campsite is 22 euros, Daillot said, compared with 116 euros, about $100 for a hotel. Increased private ownership coupled with changing consumer expectations has led to a gentrification of camping. Although many cheaper sites have benefited from France's cost of living crisis, 5-star venues can easily cost 2,000 euros a week. They've become places with television, air conditioning, swimming pools with gigantic water slides, said Fabien Ontiante, who directed a popular trilogy of, quote, camping films. There's no longer much that is ecological about them. Ontiente has first-hand experience of the threat. The Flottes Bleues campsite in southwest France, where he filmed the trilogy, was largely destroyed by wildfire in 2022. He said campsites were a sort of laboratory where modern French identity was forged, and so it was imperative the industry adapt to a hotter future. Liberty, equality, fraternity. Fraternity is important, he said. That's what I love about campsites. People are together. They play games together. It's a good atmosphere. Then at the end of the holidays, people say, see you next year. Pre-election attacks on journalists alarm Israel. The security camera pointed at the entrance of Channel 12's Tel Aviv headquarters captured the attack. A masked man ran toward glass doors of Israel's most-watched television channel and shattered it with a brick. Next time, the brick will be aimed at one of your heads, read an anonymous letter left at the scene, naming dozens of public figures. The letter included a warning. In the end, someone will die. Tuesday's attack was at least the third act of vandalism against an Israeli media outlet within a month, and the latest in an escalating pattern of threats, graffiti, and intimidation aimed at journalists, unfolding less than 3 months before Israel's October elections. Someone who throws a stone at a glass door will throw it at a person's head, said Channel 12's main anchor, Danny Kushmaro, earlier in July. Someone will die, he warned. Journalists, organizations, opposition leaders, and media outlets are pointing directly to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his political allies, who routinely accuse mainstream media of bias and even aiding Israel's enemies. That hostile rhetoric, critics say, has helped create the conditions for violence, both to intimidate reporters ahead of the vote and, they fear, to lay the groundwork for disputing the result should Netanyahu lose. The October 27th vote is shaping up to be one of Israel's most contentious in years, held against the backdrop of the war triggered by the October 7th, 2023 attacks, and questions over whether Netanyahu, Israel's longest-serving prime minister, can extend his hold on power. Earlier in July, masked attackers smashed the entrances of both Channel 12 and the left-leaning newspaper Haaretz in 2 separate incidents. In May and June, threatening graffiti appeared near Channel 12's offices and outside the home of a prominent journalist, warning they would, quote, pay with the blood of their loved ones. In November and December, graffiti sprayed near the Channel 13 studios said, quote, the blood of the traitors is yet to be broadcast. Beyond vandalism, individual journalists known to be critical of Netanyahu have faced protests outside their homes, had critical billboards erected bearing their faces, and street confrontations filmed and circulated by pro-government activists. One of the activists, Mordecai David, a 26-year-old known for confronting journalists and opposition figures, has previously been embraced by key coalition members of far-right National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir. A common thread running through many of the threats is a demand for an apology tied to a coverage of the Sidi Timian affair, in which Israeli reservists were accused of alleged sexual abuse of Palestinian detainees at a military detention center. Channel 12 broadcasts leaked footage of the case in August 2024. That reporting led to criminal charges against several reservists, while the leak eventually resulted in the resignation of the Army's top legal officer. Right-wing politicians and commentators, particularly on the pro-Netanyahu Channel 14, framed the affair as a, quote, bloody libel against the military. Under pressure from these right-wing figures, the case was closed by the new military advocate general, citing evidentiary and procedural flaws. But there's blood not up for grabs. Israel's most popular news network, Channel 12, has placed the responsibility for the attacks at the feet of Netanyahu and his government. The blood of Channel 12 journalists is not up for grabs, the network said in a statement on Tuesday. Outside the station's studio, the Democrats' party leader, Yair Golan, whose name appeared in the anonymous letter, said the attack was hurled directly from the Prime Minister's office. CNN reached out to the Prime Minister's office for comment, but there was no evidence to suggest Netanyahu's office was involved in the incident. Gadi Eisenkot, who's seen as a leading challenger to Netanyahu in the upcoming elections, accused the government of running a, quote, systematic and unrestrained campaign of incitement against journalists. And former Prime Minister Yair Lapid said the attack was an attempt to undermine the elections and prepare the ground for not accepting the losses. Israel's Journalists Union said the attack did not take place in a vacuum, warning that when journalists are marked as enemies, there will be those who translate this poison into actions. The group also pointed to the timing, 3 months before the elections, as significant, and said it is in contact with the police commissioner over additional protections for journalists. On Thursday, police arrested a suspect in the incident. Netanyahu and most of his allies have yet to publicly condemn the violence. Those who did offer condemnation coupled it with continued criticism of mainstream networks. Nir Barkat, a minister from Netanyahu's Likud party, criticized the vandalism, but said Channel 12 had, quote, harmed Israeli soldiers, urging the public to switch channels and pursue legal action instead. Amishai Elio, a minister from the far-right Otzma Yehud party, tweeted he opposed violence, but added journalists as well as legal officials implicated in the Sidi Timan affair should themselves face trial. The tensions build on a long-running rift between Netanyahu and Israel's mainstream press. He has not given interviews to any of the three main channels in more than 4 years, appearing instead only on Channel 14, a station aligned with his political base, whose anchors frequently portrayed Channel 12 and mainstream outlets as hostile and unpatriotic. You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier radio reading service. The time for our morning listeners is 9:30 a.m. For our afternoon listeners, the time is 4:30 p.m. And now, a look at national news. Reflecting pool case against former Olympian dropped by the Justice Department. The Justice Department admitted President Trump's $14 million renovation of the Lincoln Memorial Reflecting Pool was, quote, hasty and botched, and its criminal case against former Olympian David Hearn that accused him of vandalizing the pool, according to a new court filing from Jeanine Pirro, has been dropped. Friday's admissions are an embarrassing reversal for Pirro and for Trump, who has insisted publicly for weeks that vandals were solely responsible for the severely damaged pool lining, chronic algal blooms, and green-hued water at the iconic landmark. 3 other people have been swept up in the administration's push to blame the pool's problems on alleged vandals, each pleading not guilty to lesser misdemeanor charges. Federal prosecutors dropped the charges against at least one of those people as well Friday, according to D.C. court records. Trump in May ordered the pricey renovations to the pool, including painting the bottom an intense blue, to be completed in time for the 4th of July. The renovation, one of many aesthetic changes to monuments Trump has directed across Washington, D.C. this summer, drew significant criticism. In an unusually descriptive filing about shoddy work on the reflecting pool this summer, Pirro's office pointed fingers directly at other federal agencies, like the Department of Interior, for the bungled renovation and Hearn's vandalism case. The damage was the result of a botched installation and not vandalism as initially represented by the Department of Interior. Indeed, USAO DC could only rely on the information provided by the Department of Interior that the damage was entirely caused by vandals, Pirro's office wrote in Hearn's case Friday. A recent visual inspection showed damage throughout the reflecting pool, even in the middle, where a vandal would not likely attempt to peel the lining, prosecutors added. Given all of this newly discovered information, it's difficult to attribute the widespread damage to the reflecting pool to vandalism, let alone establish that fact beyond a reasonable doubt. CNN has reached out to the White House and the Interior Department for comment. But there's been contradicting claims. Trump, without providing evidence, repeatedly and publicly blamed alleged vandals for destroying his pet project on the National Mall, calling them, quote, sick, deranged criminals who deserved years in jail. The, quote, scum in court will hopefully be prosecuted to the max, Trump railed on Truth Social on July 17th, calling them animals. Trump's estimation of the vandalism grew from a 250-foot-long gash in June to a 300-yard-long slashes in July. But the timeline Pirro's federal prosecutors lay out in a new court filing refutes Trump's repeated claims. In fact, the first signs of large chunks of the blue lining were peeling away from the bottom of the pool came more than a week before the former Olympian Hearn visited the landmark. On June 11th, a National Park Service engineer alerted Interior Department colleagues to some peeling of the liner around the perimeter of the pool, according to an email Pirro's office obtained in recent days. Prosecutors noted on Friday that is the same part of the pool liner Hearn was accused of ripping up. Hearn was arrested June 19th and indicted on July 2nd. Weeks after Hearn was indicted for causing more than $1,000 in damage to the pool, federal prosecutors say they received information from the Interior Department documenting serious issues with the contractor's work. The Interior Department provided less than fulsome information at the outset of this case, Pirro's office wrote in a startling accusation against an agency in the executive branch. Had DOI been forthcoming with the information clearly in its possession, the government would not have sought a grand jury indictment. Prosecutors also wrote in the filing that they received bare-bones police reports from the U.S. Park Police. The U.S. Attorney and our prosecutors say they weren't able to fully view the extent of the damage until July 17th, after the pool was drained again. None of the DOI employees suggested the pool conditions at the reflecting pool were largely a result of failures during the process of installing the liner, Piro's office wrote Friday. After requesting more documents on the pool's renovation, Piro's office said that information, quote, indicated a rushed and flawed installation process with repeated failures of the lining during the installation process and extensive peeling of the lining throughout the reflecting pool. The work, the prosecutor said, was rushed because of the events being hosted on the National Mall for the nation's 250th birthday. Analysis. These gubernatorial races could have House effects. From CQ Roll Call. 4 years ago, Republicans complained that Pennsylvania gubernatorial nominee Doug Mastriano torpedoed their down-ballot efforts in key House races across the Commonwealth. This time around, GOP nominee Stacey Garrity isn't polling any better, again complicating House Republican campaigns in the Keystone State, and Pennsylvania is just one of a quartet of governor's races, the others being Wisconsin, Iowa, and Colorado, that could have an impact on the fight for the House. There's a case to be made for including Arizona, Michigan, and Ohio, where competitive gubernatorial races overlap with the House battleground. But the margins in these contests aren't likely to be overwhelming or extraordinary, and in blue states like New York and California, Democrats are hoping their nominees perform better compared with 2022, boosting their prospects down ballot. But for 4 states in particular, the race for governor will have broader implications. In Pennsylvania, the 2022 Mastriano, a state senator, won the GOP primary with help from Donald Trump, and in the face of a Republican Party establishment concerned he would become a general election headache. Those concerns were well-founded, as he went on to lose to Democrat Josh Shapiro, the Commonwealth's Attorney General at the time, by 15 points. That margin likely limited House GOP takeover opportunities, considering Democratic Representatives Susan Wild, the 7th District, and Matt Cartwright of the 8th District each won re-election by 2 points. Vulnerable Democratic Representative Chris DeLucio won by 6 points in the 17th District. This cycle is all about defense for Republicans. Representatives Ryan McKenzie in the 7th District, Rob Bresnahan Jr. in the 8th, Scott Perry in the 10th, and Brian Fitzpatrick in the 1st are all vulnerable to some extent, and there's no guarantee the top of the ticket will be stronger compared with 4 years ago. While GOP strategists believe Garrity doesn't have the same baggage as Mastriano and that she'll run an actual campaign, she might not end up any stronger. In 4 polls from June and July, Garrity's best share of the vote was 40%, compared with the 42% Mastriano secured in 2022. And she trailed Shapiro by 13, 15, 14, and 17 points in all of those surveys, not too different from Mastriano's losing margin in 2022. And let's not forget, statewide offices are listed ahead of House races on Pennsylvania's ballots. As a look at Wisconsin. On the other side of the ledger, Republicans are excited about the race for governor in Wisconsin, where statewide offices are also first on the ballot. The GOP optimism is rooted in Democrats potentially nominating State Representative Francesca Hong in their August 11th primary, and the belief that self-described Democratic socialists can't win a swing state in a general election against the likely GOP nominee, Representative Tom Tiffany. It's been a wild ride for the Democratic primary after one of the top contenders, Lieutenant Governor Sarah Rodriguez, dropped out of the race following reports of financial mismanagement by her campaign manager. Milwaukee County Executive David Crowley re-entered the race, this time with the blessing of outgoing Governor Tom Evers, and 2022 Senate nominee and former Lieutenant Governor Mandela Barnes recently dropped out. Even though Wisconsin sent unabashed liberal Russ Feingold to the Senate for nearly 2 decades, having Hong at the top of the ticket could complicate Democrats' plans to unseat Representative Derek Van Orden in the battleground 3rd District. That's where Democrat Rebecca Cook is trying to reverse her 2024 loss to the Republican in a race. Inside Elections rates a toss-up. A Hong primary could probably end Democrats' long-shot chances of knocking off Representative Brian Steele in the 1st District. For Iowa, there's something in the water this cycle in Iowa, which has largely favored Republicans over the past decade, but now has competitive races up and down the ballots. In Trump's first midterm election in 2018, the state's House delegation flipped from 3 Republicans and 1 Democrat to 3 Democrats and 1 Republican. Abby Finkenauer defeated Representative Rod Bloom in the 1st District. Dave Loebsack won re-election in the 2nd, and Cindy Axne unseated Representative Dave Young in the 3rd. That happened as Republican Governor Kim Reynolds was winning a full term by nearly 3 points over Democrat Fred Hubbell. This time around, the political conditions appear to be worse for Republicans. Not only is there an unpopular GOP president in the White House, but State Auditor Rob Sanders within striking distance of becoming the first Democrat to win the governorship in 20 years. If the election were held today, he'd likely win. And Democrats have a chance at the Senate seat as well, with Representative Josh Turek and GOP Representative Ashley Hinson battling to succeed retiring Republican Joni Ernst. Democrats also have a chance to shift the House delegation from its current 4-0 GOP advantage to a 3-1 Democratic edge. Inside Elections rates the race for the 1st District between GOP Representatives Marionette Miller Meeks and Democrat Christina Bonahan as a toss-up. The 3rd District, Representative Zach Nunn against Democrat Sarah Trone Garriott, is rated as tilting Republican, and the 2nd District of Hinson's open seat, where Democrat Lindsey James faces Republican Joe Mitchell, is rated likely Republican. You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier radio reading service. The time for our morning listeners is 9:40 a.m. For our afternoon listeners, the time is 4:40 p.m. Now on to business news, particularly in development. Project to revive Broadway Market gets the green light. Get ready to see a whole new look for the Broadway Market. The Buffalo Planning Board on Monday gave the green light for plans by the city and Empire State Development Corp. to renovate the inside and outside of the East Side food and retail destination to make it more of a year-round hub for the neighborhood and the city. The $50 million project, which has been in the works for 6 years, will transform the 90,000 square foot complex by right-sizing its market hall for existing and new vendors and clustering them around a main central aisle, while creating a new overflow area for the annual surge in business around Easter. It would also add more production and demonstration space, redo the building's mechanical, electrical, and other systems, and restore the building's exterior appearance to its original 1960s look. We're just very pleased to be at this point, said Christopher Less of Flynn Battaglia Architects, calling it a, quote, complete renovation of the building from soup to nuts, no pun intended. Other exterior work will include waterproofing on the new roof drains, new stairwell roofs, removal of 2 small brick chimneys, the rebuilding and relocation of a wall, and landscaping. The market will, however, have far less parking, as the project includes the demolition of a 900-space rear parking structure, because Less said structural engineers found degraded concrete and significant deterioration of the exterior parking level columns on the 2nd floor after years of exposure and weather conditions, and the cost of repairing it was too expensive to fit within the budget. Instead, it will be replaced with a 73-space surface parking lot along with a small plaza in front to hold 10 to 15 tents for small farmers markets or similar outdoor events, as well as a 4-bay loading dock to accommodate trucks delivering goods to the market. 2 side loading docks will also be added, which could also be used for outdoor dining space. But while that appears to be a big drop in parking, half of the current parking facility can't be used anyway because of the deterioration, and a total of 397 cars were parked in the garage at the peak of the recent Easter season. That's the only time such parking is needed, as only about 50 spots are normally needed. Construction is expected to start in August, with completion by January 2029. Plan to build homes on Gray Street okayed. The Planning Board also approved plans by Mount Aaron Missionary Baptist Church and its Community Hope Builders nonprofit to construct 15 single-family affordable homes for sale on Gray Street at prices from $250,000 to $300,000. The 2-phase project, a spinoff of the church's Mount Aaron Village housing project with apartments and townhomes, would put up prefabricated homes on identical narrow but deep lots using properties purchased from the city. Each would have 3 bedrooms, 1.5 bathrooms, a full basement, a kitchen and living space, and its own driveway and front porch. All would be 2 stories, except one ranch-style house in the middle that would be accessible, and the homes would be differentiated by their windows, shutters, and siding. The project would be funded by New York State's Homes and Community Renewal. This is a win-win project for Buffalo and the community, said Mount Aaron pastor Dwayne Jones, who toured the Pennsylvania facility that manufactures the homes. They're quality homes, and this is a win. Now on to personal finance. Prices pumping up. 6 tips for keeping your budget on track when the cost of gasoline soars. Higher summer demand, renewed conflicts between the U.S. and Iran, and other global disruptions helped push the national average price for gas back over $4 a gallon for many Americans. It's an unwelcome added expense for many households whose budgets are already strained. Low-income earners and people living paycheck to paycheck are being hit the hardest. They already stretch have budgets stretched thin by higher inflation in food and rent costs, says Evan Potash, Executive Wealth Management Advisor at TIAA Wealth Management. This is especially true in rural and suburban areas without access to public transportation. The households I worry about the most are the ones with long, non-negotiable commutes and little flexibility, and how and when they get to work, says Michael McAuliffe, the founder of Family Credit Management, a nonprofit debt management organization. Here are a few tips to manage higher gas prices, even if you don't have any extra money or can't decrease your driving. Number 1, calculate. The first step is to calculate how much more you'll likely pay. For a typical commuter, a price spike usually adds somewhere around $40 to $100 a month, says Matt Twyford, CFO at finance consulting firm Pegacorn Group. It's painful, but knowing the real number tells you how much you actually need to adjust instead of panicking and overcutting. Add up how much you spend per fill and multiply it by how many times you expect to get gas in the next month. Compare this to how much you previously spent. This can give you a general idea of how much more you can expect to spend. If you have a budget, revisit recent months and see how much you spent on gas in the past and compare it to how much you spend now. Alternatively, you can go through past credit card transactions or receipts to see just how much you've spent. Number 2, adjust. Now that you know how much more you expect to spend on gas, you can find other places to cut back. Examine discretionary spending and identify the lowest priorities that might be a subscription service to streaming services, expensive food delivery services, or memberships not used frequently, Potash says. If you don't have a budget, go back through your past transactions and figure out where you spent the most money and where you can temporarily spend less. A budgeting app like Rocket Money or Quick and Simplify can help you see how much you're spending each month and quickly identify where you can cut back. Number 3, avoid credit. Many drivers pay for gas on a credit card. If you carry a balance month to month, high interest rates can mean you're paying much more in the long run, even after accounting for extra fuel rewards and credit card points. If that additional $75 of gas at the pump means motorists are forced to incur revolving debt, they could pay interest longer than the price increase, says Stephen Min, Chief Credit Officer at Credit One Bank. It's better to cut back spending elsewhere in your budget. And number 4, protect your priorities. Don't put your retirement and long-term savings goals at risk. If you have a plan to save a certain amount per month, stick to that plan and adjust in other areas if your gas budget has to increase, says Allison Donaldson, CFP, a financial advisor at HTG Advisors. A good savings plan has room for diversification. If possible, avoid reducing retirement contributions or pulling from retirement accounts at all. Cut discretionary spending first, like dining out. If you absolutely need to pull from savings or reduce your retirement contributions, only take what you need and minimize the effects as much as possible. Try to replace the loss later when gas prices go down. Stay consistent, try to save as much as you can, and hope that you will make up for the times you came up short later when the market settles down, Donaldson says. As part of our newspaper reading, we now present the day's death listings. If you need further information on any of these names, please call us at 716-821-5555. That number again being 716-821-5555. Emmett Adams, Patricia L. Anderson, nee Laudy, Mary Andriana Hipple, Claudia M. Borowitz, Susan Marilyn Boatsenhart, nee McCartney, Mark D. Braven Sr., Sheila Shelley A. Bromley, nee Krukowski, Deborah A. Buselli, nee Bell, Linda A. Bush, nee Snopkowski, Eric Cacciatore, Dorothy Kavanaugh, William E. Bill Conrad, John H. Crosata, Joseph T. DiMatteo, Carl J. DeSimone, Mamie E. Doggett, Josephine Dublino Nebova, Paul T. Fryer Jr., Kathleen Glascott nee Joyce, Frank A. Gugino, Jack E. Hambridge, Dennis V. Hannon, Edward G. Hill III, Bridget P. Hubbard, Maurice Ginzecco, Robert J. Keitcher, Carol A. Kennedy nee Lund, Theodore J. Kleiman, Thomas F. Clem, Eugene P. Yugi Koshimsky, Thaddeus M. Ted Kolinkowski Sr., Casimir A. Kosminski, Richard J. Langenfeld, Eleanor Long, Daniel T. Malkowitz, Joseph G. Manarina, Barbara Maynor Nifehi, Daniel J. McNulty, Joseph A. McPartlin, Eunice E. Mead, Donner, Frank R. Morbido, Nancy Lee Morrissey, Louis L. Motika, Sandra L. Mountseven, Patricia Ann Neighbor Ni Zastimpowski, Saw Nian, Norman G. Pearson, Sharon M. Puckhaber, Matina P. Pullman Ni Cass, Robert Edward Zizinski Jr., Patricia Elizabeth Ramgopol Ni Kalichia, Marjorie R. Rahak Ni Morrissey, David W. Rumsey, Kenneth E. Schnoenbrick, Dorothy Agnes Schwab, Virginia Swan Doak, Elizabeth V. Taylor Ni Glowney, Leonard G. Tilney Jr., Barbara L. Trabert Ni Allen, Stanley T. Urban, Michael R. Wallenhorst, Sandra J. Wilson Ni Gazer. If you need further information on any of these names, please call us at 716-821-5555. That number again is 716-821-5555. And now to the horoscopes. It's Royal Stars from Georgia Nichols. Happy birthday for Sunday, August 2nd, 2026. You're energetic and loyal. You're also straightforward and incisive and logical. This is a slower paced year. Take some time to rejuvenate your energy. Focus on business and personal relationships and hang out with people who are kind and helpful. Focus on what brings you happiness. The stars will show the kind of day you'll have. 5 being dynamic, 4 is positive, 3 is average, 2 is so-so, and 1 is difficult. For Aries, those born March 21st through April 19th, it's a 2-star day. Today is really a mixed bag. There are fun opportunities to play and enjoy socializing with others. However, you might be sandbagged by someone who's critical or negative. But tonight, you win. For Taurus, those born April 20th through May 20th, it's a 3-star day. Home and family are your primary focus right now. Unfortunately, discussions about money, kids, vacations, and fun outings might trigger disputes or confrontations. Tonight, privacy. For Gemini, those born May 21st through June 20th, it's a 2-star day. You're high vis today, which means more people notice you than usual. However, it's easy to find yourself at odds with authority figures, parents, bosses, and even the police. Tonight, friendships. Cancer, those born June 21st through July 22nd, 3-star day. Steer clear of controversial subjects because some people are just itching for a fight. Don't let them find you. But tonight, you're admired. For Leo, it's a 2-star day, those born July 23rd through August 22nd. Despite your interest in cash flow, earnings, and financial matters, today, don't discuss these issues with anyone else, especially if someone owes you money. Tonight, explore. For Virgo, it's a 2-star day. Even though Venus is in your sign promoting diplomacy and charm, nevertheless, relations with partners and authority figures are dicey. Tonight, check your finances, and Virgo is anyone born August 23rd through September 22nd. For Libra, those born September 23rd through October 22nd, it's a 2-star day. You like to keep the peace, and you like harmonious surroundings, but today people are too quick to be on each other's case or dispute issues, and even criticize others. Tonight, be cooperative. Scorpio, those October 23rd through November 21st, it's a 3-star day. This is a tough day for romance because people are in a bad mood. Your feelings might be quickly hurt, or you might hurt someone else's feelings. Tonight, work. For Sagittarius, it's a 2-star day. This is a poor day to ask authority figures to ask for permission or approval. Likewise, discussions with partners and friends might be alienating tonight. Tonight, play. And Sagittarius is November 22nd to December 21st. Capricorn, those born December 22nd through January 19th, it's a 3-star day. Because people are sensitive and also unnecessarily critical, issues with work colleagues might come into a head today and create problems. It's not good. But tonight, relax. Aquarius is January 20th through February 18th. You're having a 2-star day. This is the perfect day for a nap. Unfortunately, romantic relationships are stressed and disappointing. Tonight, conversations. And Pisces, those February 19th to March 20th, it's a 3-star day. Bury yourself in work or escape somewhere because you your relations with others are challenged today. Don't expect cooperation or help from them, but tonight, maintain your possessions. And on this day in history, August 2nd, in 1776, most congressional delegates formally signed the Declaration of Independence about a month after the Second Continental Congress voted on it. In 1790, data collection began for the first U.S. Census. Although the survey took months, census takers were told to record information as of August 2nd. It covered the original 13 states, plus what is now Kentucky, Maine, Tennessee, and Vermont, and totaled 3.9 million people. In 1923, President Warren G. Harding died in San Francisco. The cause of death was likely a heart attack, but his wife's decision to refuse an autopsy and order immediate embalming sparked rumors for a generation. In 1934, Chancellor Adolf Hitler became dictator of Germany after President Paul von Hindenburg died. The German democratic state would not revive until after World War II. In 1956, Missouri became the first state to award a construction contract for a section of the new U.S. interstate highway system. The first contract signed was for Route 66 in Laclede County. In 1990, Iraq invaded Kuwait. President Saddam Hussein refused to withdraw, setting off the U.S.-led Gulf War. And in 2018, TikTok became available worldwide after merging with Musical.ly. You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier radio reading service for August 2nd, 2026. We'll return for more readings after this short break. Your reader for the first hour has been Edwin J. Vieira. Stay tuned for Ron Bickelman in the second hour. And thank you for listening.
If you're listening to this publication online, you're probably using our website, a podcast player like Spotify or iTunes, a streaming service like Siro, or a smart speaker. Did you know that we now have a dedicated app that can be downloaded to any mobile device, like a smartphone or tablet, for free? App users can conveniently access our live stream and any episode of our podcast easier than ever. To download the app, just type NFRRS in the search window in the Apple App Store or in the Google Play Store. Contact us anytime if you have any questions by calling 716-821-5555, extension 5. Thank you.
continue now with our reading of articles from today's Buffalo News. Your reader is Ron Bickelman. Scandals drove Erie County fleet reform, but some frustrated and exhausted by new policy. After scandal, controversies, and negative audit findings erupted over the last 2 years regarding the misuse, abuse, and unchallenged rising costs of taxpayer-funded vehicles driven by Erie County employees, legislators agreed to revise the rules that govern the use of 1,200 county vehicles owned and leased at a cost of $10 million a year. Erie County legislators said they wanted one policy that would apply to every elected official and department. The last time the county's fleet got a serious look was nearly a decade ago. Based on interviews with the county legislators and staff, as well as policy committee discussions and actions, that work turned out to be much messier than expected. A 3-month plan to have a new fleet policy adopted turned into 6 months. The legislators' fleet policy subcommittee stopped regularly meetings. Draft policies that circulated among the legislatures received limited feedback. In the end, the policy does not line up with initial ambitions. It's far and away from where it needed to be, Myers said, but we'll get there. It's just a lot. A hastily drafted amendment unanimously approved Thursday also states independently affected officials may adopt a separate fleet vehicle policy that could supersede the unified policy the legislature spent half a year drafting, a sharp break from the legislature's original intent. Legislators Frank Todaro, Republican from Lancaster, and Majority Leader John Gilmore, Democrat from Hamburg, said Thursday they don't believe the legislature has any policy-making authority over independently elected officials. We can't tell them what to do, Todaro said, adding they're duly elected officials, therefore they can have their own policy, period. Limited involvement. Few legislators wanted the responsibility of taking on the task of overhauling a complex fleet policy that would apply equally to everyone in county government. 2 of 11 legislators did most of the work. Tasha St. Jean Tard, Democrat of Buffalo, who drafted, consulted, and redrafted the revised policy that was ultimately amended and adopted last week, and Jeannie Vinnell, Democrat from Amherst, who chaired the Fleet Policy Subcommittee and called in administrators and independently elected officials for answers and feedback. County Attorney Jeremy Toth had stated early as the top governing body, the legislature was within its authority to enact a countywide policy. Many other countywide policies exist, but multiple legislators said last week they received conflicting legal opinions. Several legislators pointed that the sheriff's office already had a separate, relatively new fleet policy developed with an outside consultant that it should be permitted to use. Legislators also expressed little interest in clawing back taxpayer-funded take-home vehicles from county officials who have them now, but don't necessarily need them for county business. Finally, while some were willing to spend more time deliberating on the policy, others said that they were already far behind schedule and felt pressured by administrators to bring the policy committee work to a close. We're not covered in one glory on this one legislator said. Last week's dust-up. A few major public concerns were voiced by County Legislator St. Jean Tard's draft fleet policy 2 weeks ago when the matter came up for discussion at a committee meeting. Some asked clarifying questions, but no one publicly expressed opposition to what was described by members as a common-sense policy. However, 1 week later, when the policy was being discharged for approval, multiple legislators expressed apprehension and objections to the policy's reach. Leaders for Democratic and Republican caucuses met for some last-minute wrangling over amendment language to limit the legislator's own authority to impose policy, delaying the legislator's regular session by half an hour. Senator St. Jean Tard said it had become obvious that the compromise was necessary because she didn't have the votes she needed to pass the revived fleet policy. Myers said that he thought that the policy would have had the votes to pass, but legislators felt it was meaningful to develop a final policy that had greater legislator support. Flynn unopposed for supervisor in town of Tonawanda. Tonawanda Supervisor John J. Flynn can take it easy in November's special election. That's because town Republicans aren't running anyone against him in the contest to decide who will serve out the final year of the term of Flynn's predecessor, Joseph Eminger. Flynn, a former Erie County District Attorney, was appointed by the town board in May to take Eminger's place for the rest of the year. He has the backing of Tonawanda Democrats in the fall special election for the right to fill the job through the end of 2027. Conservatives have also thrown their support to Flynn, while the GOP and Working Families line will remain blank, officials said. The deadline to nominate a candidate was July 23rd. I'm obviously grateful that I do not have an opponent, Flynn said Thursday, but I think that it just goes to show that I've been able to work across the aisle with everybody for the betterment of the community, whether it's was a DA, now as a supervisor. Town Republican Chair Scott Marzewski said the party wasn't able to convince a candidate on short notice to run in a special contest for a 12-month term. He said he believes Republicans will have better luck next year when Flynn must run for re-election to fill a full term as supervisor. I can't really say definitely, but I think it's more attractive to say let's run for a campaign for a full term. Marzewski told the Buffalo News. Eminger had served as supervisor for just over 10 years when he announced in April he would resign the post, leaving office 19 months before the end of the term. Tonawanda Democrats swiftly coalesced behind Flynn as Eminger's successor. The four remaining members of the Tonawanda Town Board, all Democrats, named Flynn to fill the supervisor post through the end of 2026. Eminger's resignation also triggered a special election to be held on Election Day for the final year of the term as a supervisor that ran from 2024 to 2027. The leaders of the Democratic, Republican, Conservative wing of the Democratic, Republican, Conservative, and Working parties had authority to pick candidates for this race. Flynn sought and received Democratic and Conservative Party backing. Republicans had previously expressed optimism that the party would find an opponent for Flynn in the special election, but Marzewski said this week the timing of a special contest for a one-year term wasn't ideal. Tonawanda Democrats had swept recent town races. However, Marzewski said the GOP's electoral struggles weren't a factor in the party's failure to find someone to challenge Flynn. Tonawanda Republicans didn't endorse Flynn for supervisor this year. Next year, the supervisor's post and one town board seat are on ballot for terms that would run through 2030. The terms are for 3 years instead of usually 4 years because the change is required to comply with a new state law that shifts some local level elections to 11 years. When Flynn ran for re-election as Erie County District Attorney in 2020, he was cross-endorsed by county Republicans as well as conservatives and other minority parties. Flynn said he'll do what he can over the next 6 or 7 months to convince leaders of the other parties that he's worthy of bipartisan backing in the 2027 election. This is a huge amount of partisanship in our politics right now, not just here but nationally. And I think that it's quite frankly a good thing that we have people in position in elected offices that can work together and can work across party lines to help the community, Flynn said, and I plan to continue to be that person. Trenel draws global art world to historic Medina. Medina has always been cool. Sure, it's tiny, but it's also one of the most beautifully and historically intact small villages in New York of any state has. Medina's downtown business strip, lined with 19th century structures, many made from eponymous sandstone, looks almost too good to be true. Main Street in Medina is like a temporary Hollywood movie set, except these buildings are rock solid and, for the most part, exquisitely restored. A summer day trip to the Erie Canal focused enclave is always a good idea, but this year it's almost imperative. Western New York have only 1 month left to come here and explore Medina Terraneo, a sprawling 10-location survey of site-specific installations and individual artworks by 39 artists whose origins range from Lithuania to Spain to Zimbabwe to Finland, among 17 other nationalities, including the U.S. The survey's ambition is signaled by its theme, all that sustain us. Ambition also appeared to be a labor-intensive scope of these installations, that is, if you can even term Mary Mattingly's barge that was floated to Medina from Rochester, or Assad Raza stream that reroutes water from the Erie Canal into an adjacent building, mere art installations. Many of these projects involved construction crews that had to be recruited from Buffalo and elsewhere. Others were still being built interactively with the help of visitors to the event. There is no admission charge for any of it. If Buffalo is, for the most part, unaware of triennial, as I suspect is the case, the contemporary art world has taken note, with glowing reviews and extensive previews appearing in such journals as Art News, Art Forum, and Il Giornale dell'Arte. Despite its cosmopolitan trappings, however, there's nothing glitzy about this sincere, locally focused collection of projects. They really do take on the central question of title, albeit in ways that are not immediately be apparent. How do we get what we need to be humans living in the world? Not just food, water, clothing, and roofs over our heads, but also elemental joys that come from being alive. And now the experience is changing. Some may add, and why does this question need to be answered in Medina by artists? The decision was made in the early 2020s by the New York Power Authority and the New York State Canal Corporation. Interestingly, these two state bureaucracies determined that culture and art were important elements to be considered in opening revitalization of the Erie Canal and the municipalities that line its paths. They provided most of the funding that made the triennial possible. Artistic directors Carrie Conti and Karen Lanceau lead the team that brought this massive endeavor to life. In the spring of 2024, their 30-page proposal was chosen after several rounds of eliminations by 5-member governing boards that included AKG's public art curator, Aaron Ott. Conti's statement in the Triennial Guidebook handily brings that choice of quaint Medina, which is surrounding farms and picturesque streetscapes, in this perspective. The rural is not a reminder of the past or backyard of cities. It's one of the places where the future is being negotiated most intensely through water, housing, food, and energy, and the new infrastructure of data, codes, and algorithms. Don't forget that Medina is only 13 miles from Alabama, where 500 megawatt center hopes to find a home. There is no escaping modern life's conundrums, as the artists of the Triennial demonstrate. Happily, there are colorful, lively, even fun ways to do that. What could be more delightful than a floating garden? That's how artist Mary Mattingly transformed the 30-foot by 80-foot barge moored on the canal to the Triennial Hub Visitor Center at 345 Main Street. In addition to the edible medicinal plants, the barge holds a shelter for programming that's prefabricated in the fall with the help of students from Rochester Institute of Technology, Golisano Institute. The events are regularly held on the barge. Last Saturday, there was a butterfly release. Mattingly work consistently juxtaposes a seemingly nature-averse world of urban industry with a world of growing things that, yes, sustain us. Victoria Angenzit, Yadondion's work can be found in the former Medina High School building, which many locals will remember as the site of another art show, Playground, in 2018 and 2019. The building holds the bulk of Triennial's artwork. Udonian's work has a more somber appeal than Mattingly. Born in Nigeria, she's currently visiting artists at the University of Buffalo, has long known her work in textiles. For her installation, Mine Anam Utam, Undondian exchanged discarded coats for new garments that she gifted to the donors of the used clothing. The worn garments are transformed into moving, speaking sculptures that address Black history, labor, and global trade through secondhand clothing. Work by 26 artists is spread throughout the school building. Visitors should be sure to leave ample time to see everything, including a glass installation by another University of Buffalo artist, Matt Kenyon, and a poignant assemblage of fabric, piano, wood, wire, feathers, and a bird's nest by Six Nations artist Jay Carrier, who died last year. Testimonials have satisfied visitors have been flowing in, according to Triennial Operations Manager Shirley Verico, until recently curator of Buffalo Art Studio, who comments that Triennial is its own beast, completely different from anything I've ever done in my last 30 years in the arts. But what are Medina residents making of their town becoming a heaven for experimental art? Co-artist director Alonso assures that the local response has been positive, but also that an effort was made to truly embed the Triennial team in the community. You're listening to a reading of articles from today's Buffalo News. Time is 15 minutes after the hour. Is the base of Bills Mafia priced out of the new stadium? It wasn't just for a fellow Bills fan. There was no way Jennifer Moscato and he 15-year-old son were going to be able to see inside of the new Highmark Stadium this season and possibly for quite some time. A season ticket holder gifted Moscato tickets to one of the Bills' 2 preseason games in August. That situation could become common tale for Bills fans and could change the way people have been watching the team in person for generations. Tickets to Bills home games this season, for the most part, are available only on the secondary market. Prices start more than $300 for every home game except for the regular season finale in January. That includes a getting cost of around $600 for the team's regular season home opener, September 17th, Thursday Night Football. Meanwhile, some of the season ticket holders who splurged to buy personal seat licenses and tickets that, in some cases at least, doubled in price are feeling the impact on their disposable income, resulting in fewer recreational purchases and scaled-back vacation planning. While most of the stadium's 60,000-plus seats will be occupied by season ticket holders who paid a PSL, significantly fewer seats in the stadium than the old building. The Bills continue to have success. These types of prices may be the new norm, at least for a few seasons. It comes with demand to see the new stadium. Tickets are being more limited, and season ticket holders pricing their seats high when selling to try to recoup some of their PSL costs and higher ticket prices. Moscato could not afford season tickets even before the new stadium, which is set to open in a week. But she always enjoyed casually getting together with friends and going to a game or two each season. That may be a thing of the past. I feel like all of this has gone away, and I feel like the people who have put the spirit behind the Bills Mafia are not being heard or not being seen now, said Moscato, who works in the tourism industry in Western New York. Michael Wojcicki, a retired teacher who was a 43-year season ticket holder in the 60s, decided against continuing at the new stadium and buying a PSL, which must be purchased to get season tickets. He had been going with his brother and friends since the early 80s. They discussed trying to get a game together for this season, but the tickets are just too expensive, which Kiki said. Instead, he'll get together throughout the season with 3 friends who are part of the season ticket group and tailgate to watch a game on TV. The prices are just high and not something that any of us are willing to pay, which Kiki said. For those of us who pay a PSL and the cost may wind up having an impact on their other spending, some fans may be paying for their decision for a while. Alex Lucci, a physical therapist who lives downstate, got 2 season tickets between him and his mother and sister as part of a group of 6 seats with other family members. His mother, who lives in Lackawanna, and his sister in Rochester have been season ticket holders for 15 seasons, and Lucci comes here for several games each season. Their seats in the corner first level doubled in price from last season, and the PSO was $5,000 each, which they paid up for up front. Going to the Bills game gives them a chance to get together with family members who no longer live locally, so Lucci said it's worth the cost. We're not a rich family, but we have enough money to stomach 2 tickets, Lucci said. Frank Wolf, a business owner who's also in local sports media, has 2 tickets as part of a group of 6 in the first level of the Bills tunnel, and his company has a suite in the stadium. He paid $10,000 each for a PSL in taking advantage of the team's payment plan, which stretches over the first full year of the purchase. He may have had means to pay the cost of PSL, but realizes other fans do not have and feels for them. A lot of fans definitely are getting the short end of the stick because a lot of them are going to have to go to those games the Bills couldn't sell out, said Wolf. who's had season tickets in the family since his father got them in 1986. I think Bills fans should be doing a lot. I think Bills should be doing a lot for the fans. I mean, they're taxpayers and they're paying for this thing he added. The Bills may be selling the fans a little short here, especially the ones who carried them for all the painful years here in the early and mid-2000s. The team did make sure to add some practices that were open to every fan on August 18th, and the non-season ticket holders would give them a chance to come see the new building. I've watched enough practices over the years, but it's a chance to check out the new venue because it may be the only time I get in there this year, he said. While some fans got priced out, others who are part of the older season ticket holder base didn't want to make the commitment to the 30-year lease license. For us, we had to think about how many years we would be attending, and we really didn't have anyone in our family to pass it down, so our changed ownership to, which Kiki said, plus the price of the PSL to me was ridiculous. Music Fair's move downtown was a big hit for the theater district. Music Fair's inaugural season at Shea's 710 Theater in downtown Buffalo was a good one. The city's theater district got a boost from it too. Organizers are already planning a brighter future for the musical theater company, whose home base was in the Northtown suburbs for 34 years before moving to Buffalo's theater district in 2025. Our collaboration agreement with Shea's has been highly successful, said Randall Kramer, Music Fair's artistic and executive director. Music Fair's theater for nonprofit professional music theater company had opened at Damon University campus since 1991, but lost its space at the university when its 10-year lease at the school ended in May of 2025. Music Fair's officials looked elsewhere before deciding at Shea's 710, formerly Studio Arena, which was the best fit. Two organizations agreed to a 10-year collaboration agreement with an option to renew after 10 more years. Under the agreement, Music Fair does not pay rent. Instead, Shea's and Music Fair share the cost and revenues from the productions. Music Fair hosts the venue, Kramer said. This collaboration that's going to continue, and we'll be looking for more partners to increase more pedestrian density, said Brian Higgins, president and CEO of Shea's Performing Arts Center, a 3-theater campus that also includes Shea's Buffalo, Shea's Smith Theater. Season highlights for the 25-26 season: 36,559 patrons attended Music Fair production downtown, which is a 76% increase over the final season in Amherst, Kramer said. Damon had 136 seats. Shea's had 710 and has more. 710 has more than 500. In addition, Music Fair distributed 1,303 free tickets to students, educators, and community groups as a way of reaching out to the community in new and impactful ways, something we would never do at our Damon location in Amherst, Kramer said. Music Fair also offered shuttle service for Amherst to 710 on selected performance dates for Amherst patrons. We're really able to take advantage of the greater capacity at 710 to really serve the community much better and reach onto the community, which is something we've always wanted to do, and we've had incredible success doing it this year, Kramer said. The musical theater company held 2 dress rehearsals prior to each show that allowed students and volunteers from Shea's and Music Fair to experience quality theater at low cost. With a 550-seat capacity that brought in 1,100 people downtown for dress rehearsals for 5 shows, for a total of 5,500 additional people on top of the 51,000 paid ticket holders, officials said. And Shea's Downtown Education Department teamed up with Music Fair to present an on-school time performance of Hairspray. Students from various schools attended the 10 a.m. performance at discounted costs of $8 per ticket. The students came from places such as Buffalo, Seneca, Randolph, Depew, Springville, Fillmore, Narden Academy, and Lockborough. Homeschoolers attended too. The Shea's Education Department plans to team up again with Music Fair in the upcoming 26-27 season for another on-the-school time performance of Disney's Frozen, organizers said. Now let's look at Asking Eric. Acquaintance has unkind things to say about surgery results. Dear Eric, several years ago, I had a basal cell carcinoma removed from my nose and had some reparative work done. My husband and I visited longtime acquaintance. She looked at me and said, "Oh, I guess that's the best he could do." Yikes. I spoke to her after the shock wore off and refused to apologize. And she refused to apologize, and even after asked me how I got my husband to marry me. What would you have said in reply? Shocked friend. Dear Shocked, sometimes the best reply is no reply at all, because this person was being cruel, and when you pointed out the unkindness out, she doubled down. So in my book, that means they're not interested in being capable of having a productive or kind conversation at the moment. It might have been a passing mood for which she could make amends for later, or it might have been some other issue, or it might have been basic unkindness. Whatever the reason, it wouldn't have served you to continue to engage with her. Sometimes we need to protect ourselves by removing ourselves from conversations. I write a lot in this column about communication, and I believe that when we communicate with each other, we extend grace to each other. We can solve a lot of problems, but that doesn't mean we always have to stay in the room if grace is not on offer. On communication is being replaced by cruelty. Dear Eric, my question is not headline news, rather about courtesy and manners. More often than one would expect, when my wife and I eat out at a better restaurant, the waiter will get the order slightly wrong. It could be a drink or a slight variant of a dish. When the error is discovered, the waiter will say, that drink or dish is on me, that when the bill comes, we are charged. But when the bill comes, we are charged. Sometimes they bring an unordered dessert that we get charged for. Usually I'm too timid to bring it up and pay the entire bill with tip. I think I probably should be more assertive, but I try to avoid uncomfortable situations. What's your call? Overly cautious. Dear courteous, I may put your mind at ease to reframe these situations as conversations instead of conflicts. The server wants to bring you what you ordered. It's their job, and good servers will want to provide good service. Thus, they would rather you alert them to that something didn't go quite as planned than for you to have a bad experience. Similarly, if the server has forgotten to move an item off the check, it would reflect poorly on you to bring it up to their attention and ask them to fix it. It won't reflect poorly on you to ask them to fix it. Most point of service systems make this relatively easy. So do consider being more assertive when these things happen. You may find that getting in the habit of letting the server know when you've been charged incorrectly takes the bite out of it. Your anxiety about it will go away. You're not chastising the server or being complaining. You're simply pointing out a small change that needs to be made. You also might consider heading this issue off at the pass by declining that free dish or drink, or just asking the item that you ordered. Again, this isn't complaining. It may be helpful to remember that drinks and dishes get remade all the time, and it's not what you ordered. You don't have to eat it. If it's not what you ordered, you don't have to eat it or drink it. Dear Eric, I'd like to add to your responses to the letter from Second Act, who was considering a career change. I changed my careers in my early 40s, spending 2 decades as an account executive in media sales, and researching my next step, I enlisted the help of a life career coach. Her suggestion was to interview people in the profession I wanted to enter with questions about experiences in the broad context of their work life. In my case, this was contacting mental health professionals. These interviews were a vital part of my transition to clinical social work through a graduate degree. I happily spent more than 25 years as a mental health clinician. As a middle career changer, we take some of the skills we learn in our first career with us to the second. All the experience matters. Happy Second Act. Dear Second Act, thanks for writing. Enlisting the service of a career counselor can be a game changer. These professionals are trained to help clients work through logistical, professional, and emotional challenges of a career change and many other work hurdles. Additionally, it's very wise to talk to others in the same field one's considering entering. Their experiences and connections can help lay groundwork for a successful transition. You're listening to a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo News on the Niagara Radio Reading Service. Time is 30 minutes after the hour. Continuing now in sports, Buffalo Sabres prospect Geary embraces pro mentality. Be a pro. That's what thing Patrick Geary learned When he joined the Michigan State hockey program 3 years ago as a college freshman, the Hamburg resident took the principle seriously. Then he brought it back to Western New York. Each time he participated in Buffalo Sabres development camp at Lecom Harbor Center. Now the 6'1" defenseman prepares for his 4th year of college hockey and will take the professional way of thinking back to school to help the Spartans. It's something he continues to refine. It's just putting everything in, everything you got every day, Gary said, growing yourself on and off the ice. The professional environment fostered Michigan State's hockey program and continues to help Gary, a 6th-round pick by the Sabres in 2024, prepare for the future. Being professional in your endeavors is just a tenet. It's not just endeavors. Your endeavors isn't just a tenet, it's a lifestyle. At one point, Gary had to embrace it. Now he's a seasoned leader on the team that made the NCAA tournament the past 3 years. He won 2 of his first 3 Big Ten Conference Tournament championships and won at least 25 games per season in those 3 years. Michigan State's hockey program, Gary explained, emulates as much as a professional hockey program as possible. I'm just taking hockey more seriously and more as a job, more than just a regular game for some guys, said Gary, who scored 2 goals with 9 assists, blocked 29 shots, and was plus 15 in 35 games this last season. Becoming a draft pick, Sabres drafted Gary 172 overall in 2024 after his first season at Michigan State. Gary, 22, attended his first development camp with the Sabres 2 days after the end of the draft. My first year at Michigan State, I really took my game to the next level, and that's what kind of got me to be drafted here. That's when you learn from these what you learn from these camps is how you use everything and to be more of a pro on and off the ice. The handful of days he spent with the Sabres immediately after the draft reinforced his experience as a freshman at Michigan State. This year, in his 3rd development camp last month at Harbor Center, he knew the ropes, and he was one of the players who led by example. Just being comfortable and bringing all the new guys in, Gary said. Everybody kind of learned from everybody. The younger guys, the first rounders, you learn from everybody here. Everybody is a great hockey player. And you really take it all in when when you get to a spot like this. With all that in his toolkit, he explained that he's developed into a defensive defenseman, prioritizes puck movement, who also emphasizes the physical part of the game. I bring a grittiness to the game, and I'm simple, hard-nosed defenseman. Goals for the season. Gary was one of 2 defensive prospects who played for Michigan State last season. Defenseman Maxim Strabik turned pro in April with the Sabres after 3 seasons at Michigan State. He was Gary's roommate the last 3 years and his primary defensive pairing partner last season before he joined Rochester of the American Hockey League on an amateur tryout agreement and played 2 games with the Admirals this spring. With Michigan State head coach Adam Nightingale, he treats us like pros, Strabik said. It's a very professional kind of environment. You build really into good habits on and off the ice, and that's his whole philosophy, to get better every day, each day, to get your max effort. Unlike Strabik or Clarence's Gavin McCarthy, who signed with the Sabres in March after this season, Boston University, Gary chose to stay for a 4th season at Michigan State. The goal he set for himself was to be a 4-year player in college. I'd love to be a captain there this year, Gary said. I feel like I'm kind of in a spot to do that. Gary will be part of a team in the 26-27 that includes 16 draft picks, including freshman defenseman Chase Reed and Tommy Blell, and freshman Jack Hextall, all of whom first-round selections this year. Now Gary gets the chance to uphold and bolster the same values he learned at Michigan State. It's definitely exciting, Gary said. There are a lot of young guys, and they've got to learn the way, Michigan State way, which is blue-collar, work hard. That's what I'm looking forward to. Get the guys going, all pulling on the same rope, get the season started. We've got a loaded team for sure, but it all comes with compete. That's what we've got to work on. Bills Gardner Johnson help off the practice field. None of the Buffalo Bills' projected starters on defense were louder or more involved in the snap of each team drill through 2 practices of training camp than safety C.J. Gardner Johnson. Hard-hitting, trash-talking, ball-hawking defensive back communicated the call to his teammates in the secondary. Each time one made a play, Gardner Johnson let the offense hear about it. After 2 uneventful days in After 2 uneventful days in the medical tent at St. John Fisher University, the Bills had an injury scare Saturday when Gardner Johnson suffered an injury to his right ankle or foot. Athletic trainers had to help Gardner Johnson from the field when he went down during an 11-on-11 period. A substantive update may not come until Monday when Brady speaks to reporters before the Bills' first day of practice in camp. The injury happened during a play in which rookie receiver Skylar Bell ran a reverse to the right side of the field. At the end, Gardner Johnson had trouble getting up. It's tough, said inside linebacker Terrell Bernard, the Bills' defensive captain for the past 2 seasons, but I think everybody knows at this level it just comes sometimes part of the game, and it sucks for anybody, especially, a guy like that to get hurt. You don't know. You really don't know, what happened. The loss could be significant for the Bills, though the depth chart at safety got replenished this offseason, led by Gardner Johnson's arrival. He is by far the best option for the play of the bulk of the snaps opposite Bishop. Without Gardner Johnson on the field Saturday, the Bills rotated Geno Stone and DeMar Hamlin into the first-team defense. Second-year safety Jordan Hancock and rookie Jalen Kilgore are further down the depth chart. A full-time player for the Bengals and Ravens over the past 3 seasons. Stone is likely first in line for an increased workload if Gardner Johnson misses time. According to Pro Football Focus, Stone missed 18.7% of his tackles and allowed 14.5 yards per reception last season, with a stark contrast to his 2023 season when he broke through with career-high 9 passes defended for the Ravens. His experience in Baltimore, specifically under now Seahawks coach Mike McDonald, showed the Bills that Stone can handle immense responsibility safety face in Leonard's 3-4 base scheme. Hanlon, meanwhile, is trying to impress a new defensive coaching staff after missing the 2025 season because of an injury. Hamlin, 28, started 14 games in 2024, totaling 89 tackles and 5 passes defended. I live for there to be a lot on my shoulders, man, said Hamlin. I don't feel comfortable when there's not a lot on my shoulders. The Bills' plan for Gardner Johnson was evident through 2 practices as Leonard had plays in which Bishop or Gardner Johnson were in the box with the other as a high safety. Stone and Hamlin will need to show the coaching staff that moving around the defense will not be an issue as Leonard asked the Bills to execute a large volume of plays. Though the veterans would be ahead in the competition if Gardner Johnson is out, Kilgore is starting his case to be on the field with the Bills stars, a 5th-round draft pick, has been the best player amongst their reserve defensive players, breaking up 3 passes Thursday and intercepting 2 during practice Saturday. Kilgore played safety and nickel cornerback in South Carolina, and the Bills chose to have him focus on a full-time shift to safety in year 1. He, like Gardner Johnson, is a hard-hitting athlete with an edge. Hancock is a second-year defensive back from Ohio State. He's gotten more time in the slot in 3 practices after his previous coaching staff made him learn both positions as a rookie. The Bills' plan at multiple positions hinges largely on Gardner Johnson's health. If there's an injury at the boundary cornerback, for example, the Bills have an option to shift D. Elford from the slot to the boundary and Gardner Johnson from safety to the slot. But the contingency plan at each position will be influenced by players' availability, which roles are earned throughout camp. The Bills could calculate a risk, counting on Gardner Johnson. They are in the eighth team in 7 seasons. Twice, the Eagles got rid of Gardner Johnson. Even though he helped them win a Super Bowl, he tends to get under the skin of teammates and coaches. I think every team's a little bit of an edge, Leonard said before practice Thursday. Biggest thing about CJ is his heart, man. He's got a huge heart. He means well, and he loves football. He loves to compete. Some of the other stuff, he's going to walk the line. He's going to cross the line. He's going to have those conversations. We're going to have those conversations with him. It's important when you have a big strong personality like that the group understands who he is and where he's coming from, right? Deep down, what he does believe, what he's all about. Continuing along in sports, in soccer, scrutiny continues as Infantino withdraws proposal to sell stakes. FIFA President Gianni Infantino is under unprecedented fire after regional confederations UEFA and CONCACAF said On Saturday, they had lost confidence in his leadership following his abandoned plan to sell a stake in World Cup commercial rights. The dramatic fallout from Infantino's scrapped $4.2 billion proposal has exposed growing unease within world soccer over his leadership style, and UEFA leading a chorus of criticism that could complicate his re-election hopes. FIFA's proposal had triggered a fierce backlash from regional confederations who said they were blindsided by Infantino's plans to sell stakes to private investors in a new unit that would run FIFA events, including World Cup. Football officials are now demanding greater oversight of decisions that could reshape the governance and commercial future of the sport. UEFA, whose 55 members had unanimously rejected the proposal earlier this week, declared FIFA's retreat a victory for the whole game, while adding that the task of rebuilding trust in FIFA had only just begun. The current leadership has not only lost UEFA's confidence, but also that of many other members of the football family, UEFA said in a statement. We cannot keep on going on like this with secret schemes and fast-track timescales cooked up by faceless individuals and dubious benefits of the game. We must identify those responsible, hold them to account. North America, Central America, and Caribbean Federation, CONCACAF, said the proposal was advanced outside all established governance properties. A proposal of this magnitude does not reach that stage by accident. It's a symptom of leadership that has stopped putting football first, it said. The backlash raised questions about Infantino's political capital as he prepares to seek another term in office. UEFA reminded Infantino about promises he made when he was elected FIFA president in 2016, including pledges to run the governing body transparently and to treat FIFA's funds as belonging to its member associations. On both promises, he failed to deliver, UEFA said in a statement. The shabby, backroom, opaque deal he launched and tried to force through was anything but transparent. UEFA will begin to work immediately to partner with stakeholders all over the world and right across the game to propose a new way of distributing resources throughout the existing FIFA Forward program. FIFA and Infantino declined comment on UEFA's statement. The Dutch Football Association said the process had led to a fundamental breach of trust in Infantino, while both German football president Bernhard Neuendorf said the Swiss official had acted unilaterally without transparency, failing to act in the sport's best interests. Norwegian Football Federation President Lise Klaveness said the framework of international football cooperation was unnecessarily put at risk in pursuit of individual interests. Now let's take a look at some of the Bills' mailbag, how the vibe has changed under head coach Brady. The Real Radman asks, it's definitely apparent that Joe Brady definitely has a different approach and vibe than Sean McDermott, and that's not a knock against Mickey D. What about the players? Have you noticed any different vibe from them this year compared to the past, and if so, what's the difference? I feel like it's a broken record telling people it's early, but it's early. I think a different vibe for players specifically will be more apparent once the pads come on. Some players have said that they feel it's a little looser, but that's easy on day one of camp, in my opinion. Give me a heated 11-on-11 on a toasty Rochester morning, and then I'll have a better pulse on the players' vibe. Right now, there are still plenty of similarities to the last few training camps. Players are dealing with Super Bowl expectations in July while knowing that there's no fast track to get there. Every camp evolves a bit with roster turnover, so while there are some differences, echoing the booms of C.J. Gardner-Johnson, I feel it's all relative. I'm curious if the earlier practice time combined with the later walk-through will wear on guys. There are some long days. Jeff People asks, obviously the staff has seen Tyler Bass kicking. Why no extra leg in camp? If not for competition, at least to keep him fresh. And take away focus from the punters. In all seriousness, Bass doesn't kick the first couple of days of camp. I think the Bills are just being cautious with Bass as it's about 6 weeks until the regular season. My colleague Lance Lysowski was among reporters who caught up with Bass on Thursday about how he's feeling. Yeah, we're ready to go, Bass said. This early in camp, I wouldn't worry about it. We'll see him. We'll see him kick some in the spring. We did see him kick some in the spring. Ed Helinsky asked, with a shorter training camp at St. John Fisher, what's your Rochester dining choices going to be this year? As I write this on Friday, I'm working hard to finish in time to make it to happy hour at a new spot, Easy Sailor. It's a tiki bar that opened after camp last year, and I have been eagerly awaiting my chance to check it out. I will report back to you on social media. The shorter camp definitely has an impact on my dining. I'm not sure as to many old haunts this year, but I guarantee I'll make it to Margie's Lakeside Inn one of those evenings for a nightcap. Sarah asks, the fan attendance looks light at camp. Is that an accurate statement? And God forbid Josh has to miss a game or two. Do the Bills have enough at QB2? I don't have specific attendance numbers, but per some, it seems slightly fewer fans on day 1 and day 2. Granted, it rained both days, so I'm not sure that the trend will continue through the rest of camp. I'm curious at the start of time, 8:30 a.m. is a slight impact. Either way, I expect more fans once the pads are on. As for your second question, backups Kyle Owen and Shane Buechele have looked a little shaky at the start of camp. If Josh Allen had to miss a game or two, I think the team can piece together a plan. A longer-term injury would be quite unsettling for the QB room. Jake asked, does Caleb Elam's Orr start at linebacker week 1? KF, I would not be surprised if that were the case. I worry that Dorian Williams' injury may take more time from which to recover, as not yet participating in team drills. But more than that, it is early. Elam's Orr, while it's early, Elam's Orr seems to be doing everything he can to earn a job outside of Williams' status. I like his mental approach after talking to him following practice on Thursday. It's been great seeing him take command of the huddle. It's no knock on Williams, but if there are any lingering injury concerns, I think Elam's Orr slides up to start. Continuing along now in the sports, the Boys of the Falls, Part 1, Kayvon. Story of Kayvon Agee, a powerful kid with promise who ponders his future, stay in the tough city that forged his family, or take the great leap into the great beyond. Let's start with today, where Kayvon Agee stands for now. He can see the edge, the uncharted yet hopeful beyond, and the pain still just over his shoulder. He can feel the breeze influencing him forward, the misty facade of Niagara Falls almost dissipating as he prepares to take a great leap forward, the crushing world around him letting up, unclenching its fist for a brief moment if he just moves on. He's just known he would end up here since his second grade, drawing from seemingly insignificant day when his elementary school selected him for the honors program. He had planned for this leap, even actively sought it as he grew to recognize that this place, Niagara Falls, would never let him go. Financial struggle here in Niagara Falls is generationally embodied by 25% poverty rate, according to the Data USA. It's among New York's highest. The picture of West New York independence colliding with communal interdependence of a struggling tourist ecosystem, leaving this coulda, would have been wonder is an attraction of its own. Kayvon is well aware of the battle he's faced, yet at the point of escape, he's motionless. Let's see why. The player, everyone in Niagara Falls High School knows him. The town was a major tourist destination, maintains a high, tight-knit level. Anyway, Kayvon Agee is a homecoming king, a star player of the high school football team who has spent his entire life in Niagara Falls. He's so talented, says Coach Donald Bass, barking over players and the spectators calling toward Kayvon during one practice last August. He's a good pass blocker. He's a real good blocker. He's a giant. And he can do whatever you ask him to do. He'd be the best tight end. He'd be the best defensive end. To be clear, Kayvon is an offensive lineman, and at 6'3", 295 pounds, college size, which is why he spent the summer of 25, traveling between college recruitment camps, attempting to grab the eyes of the coach with a clipboard and an open roster spot. He had already convinced Ithaca College, but the big boys, University of Buffalo and Syracuse, still were hesitant. Time wasn't on Kayvon's side either. He was 17 in the final year of high school, and he only had his fall's worth of film had left. He was only 2 years into his football career, and that's what you want to call it, the towering frame that made him a man-eater blindside tackle. Wasn't something he grew into until COVID-19 came and went. He started playing football in his sophomore year on a whim. You're doing all these basketball drills, but you're not a basketball player. Your father's a basketball player. His coach, who guided Niagara Falls High School since 2008, told him you're a football leader. And soon as you get serious and commit to being a football player, then great things are going to happen. In 2024, Kayvon's second season, he made Section 6 second team on a blindside tackle. His talent was unrefined and undeniable. Edge rushers merely made it within 5 yards of Niagara Falls signal caller. Any rushing attempt toward Kayvon's side on the line produced a seemingly guarded handful of yards. But he only had been training for months. Since 2015, Niagara Falls hasn't won more than 4 games a season. The signs of a program struggling with discipline are still evident. The unmotivated atmosphere, however, doesn't jive with who Kayvon was raised to be. The city, weed through the typical mumble-jumble of parents watching their little boys leave the nest, and the real message that unites Niagara Falls lifers steadily hums. Often, too, there is no true route to escape. It doesn't exist. You don't get out. Just miles from one of the largest tourist attractions in the world, the town's in flux. We've been here Kayvon's whole life, Phelps said of Niagara Falls. She outlined how life hasn't come with many choices, but hers and others in the city. Because of the bonds of real life, Niagara Falls aren't lush with an opportunity. Everyone is dependent on each other to survive the 47,000 person community, which incidentally has decreased in population all but 2 years since 1990. Anyone who thinks you can just get up and, well, I've wanted to leave, but it's so hard to do that, especially with a kid, Phelps said. It's a serious risk. Anyone who thinks they can just get up and do that, well, they're wrong. The city sustains itself as children are born into the financial struggle and subsequently have to try to scrape and claw. Their struggling is the product of decades of failed leadership, city leadership, poor management, and poor investments. Phelps could spend hours weeding through effortless attempts government figures have made to aid residents like her, but with her perspective, what's achievable, remember all that too often one really leaves. Kids in Niagara Falls struggle to maintain ambition. If you don't find something, the city gets to you, said Bass, the longtime Niagara Falls High School coach. Niagara City crime rate rests of 36 incidents per 1,000. Nearly 2 times the national level. There's a lot of these kids have nothing to do, so teaching them how to dream when their parents didn't dream is a hard thing. Ending a self-fulfilling cycle, Bass said. So in her salon, Phelps put her son's work to work, having him take the trash out to the alley. Minutes later, he's back again, and the chairs need to be moved. His mother says, watching the offensive tackle gracefully dances slowly off in the footwork in basketball days, all around building without a word. Throughout, that is providing an outlet for his time and energy to keep him from danger. Not to mention she can use the extra giant hands throughout this last summer when he worked toward the playoffs so long before he graduated. Kayvon was more often in the back of the gorgeous room salon than anywhere else, which is saying something given he owns a job in Niagara Falls. Part 2, Michael. The doors of Don Bass's Niagara Falls High School shuts and the road to the hallway fades into a dull, rhythmic hum. For years he has occupied the space, and among all items in it, the most essential is an empty chair across his desk. It remains there empty because it's open to any student who wants to occupy it. For the past few years, at least one per day, 5 days a week. Michael Taylor kept it warm. Taylor, now a senior, sometimes won't show up to talk about the football team or play. He came to Bass's office because it was the only place in the city where he didn't have to be a savior or statistic. He would just be himself. In the room, 2 at a time, he talked about religion and about being valuable in a city that demands young men to be hard. They dismissed the weight of the town where the grandeur of one of the world's natural wonders makes the struggle of the pavement. Michael grew up in this office, Bass said. The football part was easy, knowing him as a person, what I miss most. You can hear the rest of this article if you call 716-821-5555, Niagara Radio Reading Service. Let's continue now along with the scoreboard. Major League Baseball, Friday's results: American League, Chicago White Sox 6, Tampa 1, Houston 11, Texas 2, Detroit 13, the Athletics 1, Minnesota 5, Seattle 3. National League, Cincinnati 8, Pittsburgh 7, Atlanta 6, Washington 2, Miami 5, the Mets 2, San Diego 7, San Francisco nothing. Interleague, the Yankees beat the Cubs 2-0, Baltimore topped Philadelphia 6-4, Toronto 3, St. Louis 1, Arizona 4, Cleveland 1, Colorado 3, Kansas City 1, Milwaukee 6, Los Angeles 2, Boston 9, the Rangers 4. Sunday's game, Chicago at Tampa Bay at 1:40 p.m. Texas will be at Houston again at 2:10 p.m. Detroit travels to the Athletics at 4:05 p.m. Minnesota plays at Seattle. National League, Washington at Atlanta. Miami at the New York Mets at 1:40 p.m. Pittsburgh at Cincinnati at 1:40 p.m. San Francisco travels to San Diego at 4:10 p.m. Interleague, Philadelphia at Baltimore. St. Louis at Toronto. Arizona at Cleveland at 1:40 p.m. The Yankees at the Chicago Cubs at 2:20 p.m. Kansas City at Colorado at 3:10 p.m. Milwaukee at Los Angeles Angels at 3:15 p.m. and Boston is at the Dodgers at 7:20 p.m. You've been listening to a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo News for August 2nd. We read from the news on weekday and Sunday mornings at 9 a.m. and rebroadcast it at 4 p.m. For more information, call 716-821-5555. Your reader has been Ron Bickelman. Thank you for listening.
The following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or have another print disability